3, 2, 1.
I'm Bullwinkle the Moose.
And we're both from Frostbite Falls, Minnesota.
Once upon a time, Saturday mornings had a different kind of chaos. A flying squirrel, a moose with terrible aim, and villains who sounded like Cold War cartoons. We didn't know it then, but behind those corny puns and cliffhangers was one of the strangest, smartest, and most rebellious shows ever made. These are 30 of the strangest Rocky and Bullwinkle facts no one talks about. Stay till the end. The last one changes everything. Fact 1, the show almost didn't air. Hey Rocky, watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat. Remember that line?
And now...
Hey, Rocky! Watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat!
Saturday mornings, cereal bowls, static on the TV. But here's the twist, that Moose almost never made it on air. In 1959, NBC executives looked at Rocky and his friends and said, too weird, too smart, too talky for kids. The humor leaned dry, political, even self-aware, way ahead of its time. But one unlikely hero saved it, General Mills. They needed mascots for cereal boxes, and that sponsorship deal kept the show alive. Imagine it, your childhood saved by Frosted Flakes money. Sometimes culture-changing art only survives because someone wanted to sell sugar.
2 cups of flour, 1 teaspoon salt. You taking all this down?
And maybe that's poetic, because Rocky and Bullwinkle proved smart humor could sneak in under a cartoon's grin. 1 spoonful of satire at a time. Fact 2, the Cold War in a cartoon. Moose and squirrel must die. Those words, shouted in Natasha's thick accent,
Kill the moose or vice versa.
sounded like pure silliness to us kids, but behind them was razor-sharp Cold War satire. Rocky and Bullwinkle wasn't just a cartoon. It was a political cartoon in motion. Boris and Natasha weren't random villains. They were the American subconscious, lampooning paranoia, espionage, and the absurdity of propaganda. Jay Ward, the show's creator, slipped subversion into slapstick. As a kid, I just thought the moose was dumb and the squirrel was cute. As an adult, I realized they were teaching us to laugh at fear. That's why the jokes still hit. They're not dated, they're decoded. In the middle of atomic anxiety, 2 talking animals taught America how to mock its own hysteria. That's not just funny, that's fearless. Fact 3, animated in Mexico City. Ever wonder why the animation looked off? The blinking eyes, wobbly outlines, mouths that didn't match the words. Turns out, Rocky and Bullwinkle was animated almost entirely in Mexico City at a small studio called Gamma Productions. Tight budgets, short deadlines, constant chaos. But that offness...
I forgot for a minute.
But I do, and I'm going to follow it right to Bullwinkle.
Those missed frames and imperfect cuts became part of its charm. It felt homemade, raw, alive. As a kid, I didn't see low-budget errors. I saw movement, personality, pulse. It's funny how the flaws we once mocked now feel warm, nostalgic, like seeing a scratch on old film. Perfection ages fast, imperfection lingers, and somehow that shaky animation matched the moose's spirit. Clumsy, optimistic, trying its best, and winning hearts anyway. Maybe that's the real magic of Saturday mornings. Even the mistakes were endearing. Fact 4, the narrator who broke the rules. Meanwhile, back at Frostbite Falls,
I separated you from the world, yet you deceived me just for that.
the voice was calm, amused, and always one step ahead of the joke. That was William Conrad, the narrator who became a character himself. He didn't just describe the action, he mocked it, breaking the fourth wall, teasing the writers, even arguing with the plot. Before Deadpool ever winked at the audience, Rocky and Bullwinkle was doing it on black and white TV. That snarky self-awareness made kids giggle and adults smirk. I remember feeling like I was in on the joke, like the show trusted me to be smart. It was satire disguised as silliness, comedy pretending to be chaos. Conrad's voice turned narration into commentary.
And probably the most eager searchers were the 2 moon men.
And maybe that's why it endures, because in a world full of noise, the smartest joke is sometimes a whisper that knows it's being heard. Fact 5. Real political censorship. Believe it or not, Rocky and Bullwinkle once got censored by the US government. The episode Upside Isium featured a floating metal that made things defy gravity, a cheeky metaphor for the arms race. Some folks at the time thought it mocked nuclear research. Network execs panicked, and certain stations refused to air it. Think about that. A kid's cartoon pulled for being too political. Jay Ward didn't flinch. He kept the humor subtle but sharp enough to sting.
Race to beat the heavy safe to the ground, and he won.
Almost.
That's what made the show revolutionary. It proved satire could hide in plain sight. As a kid, I laughed at the moose trying to lift the rock. As an adult, I realized it was about America trying to lift its conscience. Turns out, you don't need explosions to challenge power, just a flying squirrel and a good pun. Fact 6. The voice of Rocky and Natasha, same person. And now here's something we hope you'll really like. That bright, cheerful voice belonged to June Foray, a legend who also voiced the villain standing across from Rocky, the sultry Natasha Fatale. One actress, two extremes, innocence and evil, helium and honey. It's wild to think one woman bounced between the plucky squirrel and the Soviet spy, often in the same recording session. Foray didn't just give the show sound, she gave it soul. She called Rocky's voice a Boy Scout trapped in a helium balloon, and it fits perfectly. Listening now, you can almost hear her smiling through the mic, switching tones like gears. It's a reminder that the greatest performances aren't just acted, they're inhabited. June Foray wasn't doing voices, she was breathing personalities into a Cold War circus, one giggle and growl at a time. Fact 7. The sponsor. Jay Ward trolled, picture this, a cartoon so rebellious it mocked its own sponsor on national TV. General Mills, the cereal giant footing the bill, expected clean, sugary fun.
Looks good. Go!
Instead, Jay Ward used their money to roast the absurdity of advertising itself. Fake toothpaste ads, cereal jokes about soggy flakes, even characters breaking script to question the commercials. One sponsor actually threatened to pull funding, but Ward shrugged. If the ad isn't funny, it doesn't belong on my show. That attitude defined Rocky and Bullwinkle.
You mean...
Yeah, we failed.
Fearless, self-aware, and unbothered by authority. As a kid, I didn't get the rebellion. As an adult, I love it. It's the same joy you feel when an artist sneaks truth past the suits. The moose might have looked clueless, but behind those antlers was a creative team laughing at the system and somehow getting paid for it. Fact 8. Cold War mailbags and real-life spies. After Rocky and Bullwinkle debuted, NBC started getting strange mail. Viewers accused the show of being un-American, of mocking patriotism, even of being Russian propaganda. One letter demanded Bullwinkle testify before Congress. Another claimed Boris was secretly coded communication for the KGB. Jay Ward loved it. He framed the best ones in his office. The irony, real CIA agents later admitted they were fans. One said, "We watched to see if they were mocking us." And they were. Somehow, this goofy Saturday morning cartoon had managed to prank both sides of the Cold War. As a kid, I thought Boris was just funny. As an adult, I realized he was satire, a mirror held up to paranoia. Maybe that's why it worked.
Sawmill, eh? Now we play little word game with that sign.
What game is that?
Laughter disarms fear faster than any weapon ever could. Fact 9. Boris Badenov's villainous name. Fearless leader will be furious. Even Boris's name was a joke in disguise. Boris Badenov, a pun on Boris Godunov, the 16th century Russian Tsar, an opera villain. The censors tried to block it for being too obvious, but Jay Ward refused to change a thing. Bad enough, he said. That's the point. That's the beauty of Rocky and Bullwinkle. Everything was a layered gag. Political theatre turned into playground humour. I remember hearing Badenov as a kid and giggling without knowing why. Now I get it. Ward wasn't mocking Russia, he was mocking fear itself. A pun so silly it disarmed propaganda. It's the perfect example of subversion through laughter. In a world obsessed with seriousness, the moose and squirrel proved that being bad enough was actually brilliant. Fact 10. The theme song that wasn't meant for them. That brassy, bouncing opening tune, it wasn't written for Rocky and Bullwinkle at all. It was a leftover from a rejected detective show pitch. Jay Ward bought it for cheap, and somehow it became one of TV's most recognizable themes. The horns, the rhythm, that upbeat chaos. It perfectly matched the energy of a flying squirrel and a moose outsmarting spies. Funny how accidents define art. I still remember that sound bleeding from the old living room TV, cereal crunching, my dad humming along like like it was a national anthem. Decades later, that same tune can teleport you back in time. It's proof that magic doesn't come from budget or planning. Sometimes it's just finding the right wrong song and letting it play forever. Fact 11, the first meta cartoon ever. Tune in next time. The same thing we just did. That wasn't sarcasm. It was revolution. Rocky and Bullwinkle broke TV rules long before anyone called it meta. The characters knew they were in a show. The narrator bickered with them, and the jokes mocked television itself. Before The Simpsons or Family Guy, before Deadpool winked at the camera, a flying squirrel was already doing it.
Hello there, nice to see ya.
Who are you talking to, Bullwinkle?
Watching it now feels uncanny. Humor so self-aware, it predicted the internet age. As a kid, I just thought it was funny that they talked back to the narrator. As an adult, I realized it was a masterclass in media literacy. Rocky and Bullwinkle didn't just tell stories, it taught us how to see through them, laughing at the absurdity of the screen itself. The moose wasn't dumb, he was postmodern before it was cool. Fact 12. Jay Ward tried to buy Disneyland. You can't make this up. In the early 60s, Jay Ward actually tried to buy Disneyland. He offered Walt Disney a serious offer.
All on this itty-bitty card. Oop!
Real money for the whole park. When Walt declined, Ward responded the only way he knew how. He sent a man in a moose costume to Disneyland's front gate wearing a crown and holding a sign that read King of Disneyland. Security escorted him out within minutes, but the stunt fit Ward perfectly. He lived on the edge between prank and art, constantly poking the entertainment empire that took itself too seriously. I like to think that moment summed up Rocky and Bullwinkle. A moose crashing the gates of the establishment, smiling the whole way. Sometimes rebellion doesn't need a revolution, just a costume, a joke, and the nerve to show up. Fact 13, a woman behind the squirrel, June Foray. Again, the woman behind it all. Rocky's cheer, Natasha's menace, Granny's wit, all one voice.
Then we take over a whole deserted US of A.
She recorded for 8 decades, yet most people never knew her name. When asked how she created Rocky's sound, she said, "I just tried to sound like Optimism." And that's exactly what came through. A voice that made even cynics believe in hope. Listening now, there's something almost sacred in it. The warmth, the pitch, the honesty. Foray said she saw Rocky as the heart of America. Brave, polite, and slightly exasperated. Or maybe that's why the show still resonates. It wasn't about slapstick, it was about resilience. A flying squirrel voiced by a 40-year-old woman taught an entire generation that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it squeaks. Fact 14, the lost live-action experiment. In 1985, NBC tried something wild, a live-action Rocky and Bullwinkle pilot. Real people, real props, fake animals. It was bizarre. The test audience hated it so much, the footage was buried for decades. You can still find grainy clips online. It looks like a fever dream between Saturday Night Live and a local puppet show. But here's the fascinating part. They tried because the nostalgia was already strong. The network wanted lightning in a bottle again. It didn't work because the magic wasn't in the costumes. It was in the voices, the timing, the imperfections. Watching that pilot today feels like seeing a ghost of what never should have been. Rocky and Bullwinkle weren't meant to be flesh and blood. They were ideas, and ideas don't need makeup.
But they were immediately seized by the sawmill machinery and became part of a soapbox assembly line.
Fact 15, the fairy tales that fractured themselves. Once upon a time, but not really. Remember fractured fairy tales? They aired inside Rocky and Bullwinkle, twisting old bedtime stories into witty parodies. But here's the secret. Many of them were half improvised. The actors played it like radio comedy, riffing and reacting, making up morals on the fly. It's why the pacing feels so loose, the jokes land oddly, and the charm feels accidental.
It's all settled, Natasha. Let's go.
Turn right here, Boris.
Don't be silly, Natasha.
I used to laugh at the randomness. Now I see it as genius. It was chaos disguised as creativity. The show trained kids to question every happily ever after they were fed. It wasn't just rewriting fairy tales, it was rewriting trust. And that's the beauty of Rocky and Bullwinkle. It taught us to laugh not at stories, but through them. Factor 16, Fearless Leader wasn't fiction. Zamusen's Squirrel Must Pay. Fearless Leader, okay, the scowling, monocled dictator dictator barking orders from a bunker was more than a cartoon villain. He was satire, stitched together from the world's most dangerous men, part Hitler, part Khrushchev, part every petty tyrant who ever pounded a desk. Jay Ward turned political terror into slapstick absurdity. As a kid, I laughed at his accent. As an adult, I realized how bold it was, lampooning dictators during the Cold War. In an era where Red Scares ran hot, Rocky and Bullwinkle dared to turn global fear into punchlines. That's not just bravery, that's therapy. Every time fearless leaders screamed fool at Boris, he became less scary. Ward understood something timeless. Ridicule is resistance. If you can laugh at a tyrant, you've already won. Fact 17. When serial money-funded rebellion...
Hey, he's crawling with mooseberry blight.
It's poetic, really. Rocky and Bullwinkle was paid for by the very system it mocked. General Mills bankrolled the show expecting clean, fun and product plugs. Instead, Jay Ward used their checks to fund satire that shredded corporate hypocrisy. There were jokes about cereal so soggy, even milk quit early. Commercials that parodied commercials. One executive called it corporate suicide and Ward called it good television. Imagine the audacity, using ad dollars to criticize advertising itself. But that's why the show lasted. It wasn't just clever, it was quietly revolutionary. As a kid, I didn't know I was watching rebellion disguised as cartoons. Now I see it. The moose was the middle finger of animation.
Let's see if the problem lies in resistance vibration level.
Sometimes the most subversive act isn't protest, it's parody with a sponsor's logo still glowing in the corner. Fact 18. Before memes, there was moose and squirrel. Long before Twitter quotes and TikTok audios, Rocky and Bullwinkle were viral. Kids and parents repeated their lines everywhere. Watch me pull a rabbit out of my hat became playground language. Letters flooded NBC quoting, "I got him, Bullwinkle," like catchphrases before memes existed. In a way, the show predicted the internet. Short loops, inside jokes, meta punchlines. I remember my uncle saying moose and squirrel with a bad Russian accent at every family barbecue. Everyone laughed, not at the show, but at the memory of laughing. That's cultural immortality. Jay Ward didn't build characters, he built shareable energy before shareable was even a word. The internet just caught up. Rocky and Bullwinkle were the original viral post.
Hey, that's one of the kindest acts I've ever seen.
Low resolution, high wit, endless remix potential. Fact 19. The birth of George of the Jungle. When Rocky and Bullwinkle rapped, Jay Ward didn't stop. He just swung to another vine. Using the same writers, musicians, and twisted sense of humor, he created George of the Jungle in 1967. The slapstick, the wordplay, the mock serious narration. It was Bullwinkle with a loincloth.
George of the jungle, strong as he can be.
You can even hear the same trumpet riffs in the theme. George of the Jungle, and watch out for that tree, was pure Ward. Ridiculous, rhythmic, unforgettable. It proved his comedy formula wasn't limited to one moose or one era. It was a style, a signature. As a kid, I didn't realize both shows came from the same brain. As an adult, I can see the DNA, that mix of heart, chaos, and intelligence masquerading as nonsense. Ward didn't just make cartoons, he made universes that laughed at themselves. Fact 20. The Canadian crossover that never was. Believe it or not, Rocky and Bullwinkle almost teamed up with Dudley Do-Right. The Mountie with the jawline and the Moose with the grin. One universe, one episode. But NBC cancelled it before production, calling it too Canadian. The irony? Dudley was already an American parody of Canadian politeness. The script was lost, but storyboards show Bullwinkle accidentally joining the Royal Mounted Police and trying to salute with his antlers. It would have been perfect. The earnest North colliding with the absurd. But maybe it's fitting that it never aired. Like most of Jay Ward's ideas, it was too weird, too smart, too ahead.
When Rocky and Bullwinkle arrived at their new ranch, the Lazy J, they found that it wasn't the choice.
Every time I rewatch old clips, I think about that missing episode and how even the jokes that never got told somehow still echo through time. Fact 21. The Moose's name came from a college prank. Bullwinkle J. Moose moose. Sounds like pure nonsense, but it wasn't. Jay Ward named his moose after his old college friend Clarence Bullwinkle, who once ran for class president as a joke and won. Ward thought the name sounded too ridiculous not to use. Years later, that inside joke became a TV icon. What started as campus mischief turned into a household name. I love that. The world remembers Bullwinkle, not the millionaire sponsors, not the executives, just the prankster's name scribbled on a college flyer decades ago. It reminds you that sometimes greatness begins as a goof, a joke between friends, becomes a legacy on Saturday morning television. That's the magic of Rocky and Bullwinkle. It was never just written, it was remembered from real laughter. Fact 22. Jay Ward lost his own characters. Imagine creating something millions love and then losing it. When Rocky and Bullwinkle ended, Jay Ward discovered the rights had quietly slipped to the network and sponsors. He'd built an empire of wit, but legally it wasn't his. He fought for years to reclaim ownership, filing, pleading, waiting. He passed away before it was ever resolved. Only decades later did his daughter, Tiffany Ward, finally win the rights back. She said it felt like bringing her father's laughter home. That's the tragedy and triumph of the moose and squirrel. Their creator never stopped believing in them. Watching the show now, it hits differently. Every pun, every scene feels like a man's fight for creative freedom disguised as a cartoon. Bullwinkle always got tricked, but he never quit. Neither did Jay Ward. Fact 23. The 2000 movie that almost buried the legend, Fearless Leader, returns. Robert De Niro, Jason Alexander, and Rene Russo, the 2000 Rocky and Bullwinkle movie, had all the names, none of the soul. Critics called it nostalgia without a heartbeat.
There has never been a way to actually destroy a cartoon character.
The humor felt stretched, the pacing lost. Jay Ward's wit didn't survive translation to 3D. I remember watching it in a dark theater. It felt uncanny, like seeing old friends in plastic masks. But that failure wasn't an ending. It was proof of how delicate the original magic was. The charm didn't come from technology. It came from timing, irony, and imperfection. A moose that moved awkwardly but spoke like a philosopher. A squirrel that soared without wings. Some things aren't meant to be upgraded. They're meant to be remembered. And Bullwinkle stayed timeless precisely because he couldn't be remade. Fact 24. Harvard studied the moose. In the late 60s, professors at Harvard and Stanford started using Rocky and Bullwinkle episodes in lectures about propaganda and media literacy. They realized something wild, and this goofy kids show was teaching critical thinking. The series constantly broke the fourth wall, questioned authority, and mocked fear-based messaging. Scholars wrote papers about its layered satire, calling it America's most subversive educational tool. As a kid, I laughed at Boris and Natasha tripping over their own evil plans. As an adult, I see the lesson. Power is fragile when you mock it. Jay Ward didn't just make kids laugh, he made them skeptical. That's not entertainment, that's enlightenment with a laugh track. And the fact that Ivy League classrooms once played moose and squirrel cartoons, that's proof that sometimes wisdom wears antlers. Fact 25. A joke that started an international incident. It sounds absurd, but one Rocky and Bullwinkle gag actually triggered a diplomatic complaint. In a 1961 episode, a throwaway line mentioned the trans-Canadian pipeline going kaboom. The Canadian government didn't laugh. They filed a formal protest to NBC for mocking national industry.
Hello? What?
Jay Ward responded perfectly. He mailed Ottawa a plush moose and a handwritten note that read, "Sorry, eh?" That mix of wit and warmth defined him. He could diffuse an international squabble with a pun and a stuffed toy. I remember hearing that story years later and smiling, because that's exactly what Bullwinkle would have done. The world takes itself too seriously. The moose never did. And maybe that's why, decades later, his laughter still crosses every border, still softens every punchline, still reminds us humor is diplomacy done right. Fact 26. The spies who loved the show. It sounds like fiction, but it's true. Real CIA agents were fans. During interviews years later, some former intelligence officers admitted they watched Rocky and Bullwinkle religiously. They said it was the only show that got espionage right by making it ridiculous. One even joked, "We learned more about public perception from Boris Badenov than from the KGB." Think about that. A Saturday morning living cartoon quietly teaching spies about irony. I love that image.
You up there! Drop that rock!
Men in suits, briefcases in hand, laughing at a moose who always trips over his own plans. It shows how humor crosses every line, even the ones drawn in secret. Rocky and Bullwinkle didn't just mock spies, they reminded them they were human too. In a world of secrets, laughter was the only truth left unclassified. Fact 27. The moose that saved Saturday mornings. Before Rocky and Bullwinkle, Saturday mornings were TV dead zones. Networks filled the hours with reruns or cheap filler. But when the moose and squirrel took over, something changed. Families gathered together. Kids laughed at puns. Parents caught the political jokes. Ratings exploded. It proved cartoons could work for every generation. That success paved the way for the Flintstones, Looney Tunes Hour, even The Simpsons. Without Bullwinkle, the idea of Saturday morning cartoons might not exist at all. I still remember rubbing sleep from my eyes, the sun glowing through the blinds, that familiar fanfare echoing from the TV. Cereal, pajamas, laughter. That wasn't just a show, it was a ritual. Bullwinkle didn't just save a time slot, he invented childhood's happiest routine. Fact 28. The laugh track that never was. In the 60s, television loved canned laughter, fake chuckles after every punchline. CBS wanted to add one to Rocky and Bullwinkle for reruns. Jay Ward refused. He said, if the joke needs help, it's not a joke. That decision changed everything. The pauses, the quiet stumbles, the awkward silences, why, they all stayed. And that honesty became part of the rhythm. I used to wonder why it felt so different from other cartoons. Now I get it. The silence gave us space to laugh on our own terms. It trusted the audience. That's rare, even now. Most shows chase noise. Ward believed in the sound of thinking. It's funny, a cartoon moose taught us that real comedy doesn't come from cues. It comes from connection. And that's something no laugh track can fake. Fact 29. Every title was two jokes in one. Ever notice every episode had two titles? Moose Gets the Goose, or The Bird Who Knew Too Much. Each one was a double punch, a real title, and a parody of some old adventure serial or spy movie. It was Ward's secret game with the audience. Kids didn't care, but adults chuckled every time. That layering made it timeless, silly on the surface, smart underneath. As a kid, I loved the rhythm of it. Two titles, one laugh. As an adult, I see it as early proof that the writers respected us. They assumed we'd get it eventually. Every oar was a wink, a tiny handshake through the screen. Rocky and Bullwinkle didn't just tell jokes, they invited us to join in on them. Fact 13, the moose who mocked fear. Underneath all the wordplay, the satire, the silliness, there was courage. Rocky and Bullwinkle aired during the height of the Cold War, when the world felt divided by suspicion. Yet somehow, a goofy moose and a flying squirrel made us laugh at fear itself. They turned paranoia into punchlines. They made villains lovable. They showed that mockery could be medicine. I think that's why the show endures. It didn't just entertain, it healed.
Married.
But, Tom, it seems so...
When fearless leader shouted and Boris schemed, laughter became rebellion, and in those 30 minutes of chaos, the world felt lighter. Every time I hear that brassy theme or that familiar, "Hey Rocky," I feel it again. That reminder that humor is hope in disguise. Maybe the greatest trick the moose ever pulled was making us brave enough to laugh. Whatro, and in the end, Rocky and Bullwinkle was never just about a moose and a squirrel. It was about courage wrapped in comedy, truth disguised as nonsense. During the Cold War, they turned fear into laughter and cynicism into charm. Decades later, the jokes still work because they weren't really jokes. They were reminders that humor disarms power, that optimism outlives paranoia, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do in a serious world is be ridiculous.